All right, welcome to Esoteric Lectures. It's been a while since our last upload. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus to step away from all of the depravity and evil. We're back again for another episode. Topics for today are going to include two main topics, which will be, first of all, we're going to be discussing something that we have talked about before, which is Lilith, and it's important to go over this again to emphasize what is going on right now with this Lilithian agenda that we see. We'll be going over the Jezebel spirit. We'll be going over the Lilithian demonic possession is really what it comes down to when we want to get down to the brass tacks of things, of what we see, and this will hit upon many of our audience members who are knowledgeable in this, the dynamics of the sexual politics between man and woman, and hopefully we'll shed some light on some of the things that we see manifesting itself in our society. It might clarify at least our point of view of what we see going on. And lastly, we'll be going over Alex Jones. We'll be giving our input on what we think that is about. So that is for the agenda today. Johnny, if you want to say hi to all the peoples.
Hello, everybody. I'm Johnny Midnight, and tonight I am wearing a Black Flag t-shirt for this because anarchy. Yeah, but really, tonight we're going to actually talk about Lilithian age, the Jezebel spirit, and we are also going to talk about the deplatforming or dehumanizing of Alex Jones, or should I say, quote unquote, Alex Jones, from an esoteric perspective. So get ready for this show. It's going to be great.
Yes, it is. And so I guess we'll just dive right in. So we've talked about Lilith before, and we're going to present to you our take on what we think is going on with all of this. What we have come to understand now with various different things that have been pushed in the world, such as abortion, feminism, and all of the other manifestations that have arisen from those pushes for those agendas. What it all comes down to is when you go back and study what the scriptures had to say about, Lilith. She hated humanity, and she hated the fact that she did not have power. This goes back to the story in Egyptian mythology of Isis and Osiris, where Isis was jealous of Osiris's power. And anyways, I think what happened was, I think she killed him. And she cut it. I think what happened was either she killed him, and I could be completely wrong about this, but his body was cut up into many different parts, I think by the people he worked with. Long story short, there was one missing piece, and guess what that piece was? It was his dick. And that was the one thing that Isis was looking for. And the reason for that is because it has to do with power. She wanted the power, and that's what she was jealous of. The same dynamic plays itself out in these characters in Egyptian mythology as well as Roman mythology. There's always a main woman that is in a high level of power, or a high level of position trying to gain power. And what we notice in every single one of these civilizations that we have had is that the minute that kind of dynamic takes place, the whole civilization is destroyed. When they start pushing this Jezebel demonic Lilithian mindset of this raw woman nonsense.
And it happens in cycles. You will have a male age that is dominated by Jehovah, the demiurge, Yahweh, whoever you want to call them. Okay. And that age will be male dominated. And then it clocks over just like a mechanism into a female dominated age. Lilith, Venus, Isis, name her what you want. It is what it is. Same damn shit. And we are actually experiencing the transition from the we're Piscean right now, and we're going into Aquarian.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at these civilizations, like Johnny said, every single one of these civilizations have allowed these Jezebel fucking women into these positions of power, and all of a sudden all hell breaks loose. And that's what we're experiencing in the United States right now. You know, I was telling Johnny off air that there was a school in Texas that had put up a sign at the school that said, if it was a message to the young high school women that were students there, it basically went. It said, if you act like a lady, then he'll act like a gentleman. And in some ways, that's kind of a double think quote, because it's in part of it, I'll get into that later. But anyways, this was put up there, and somebody had posted this, which are, automatically a suspect. And the thing that you have to understand is that you cannot take everything that you see and believe it, because we are in an age of ultimate propaganda right now. And everything right now is propaganda. So whether or not this is an actual thing that was put up, or whether or not it was deliberately put up there and then they just painted over it to get people to believe that that was actually there, that you have to ask yourself. But anyways, there was this big, huge uproar on Twitter, of course, of all these women that says men should treat women with respect anyway, as if they don't have that anyway. Like they don't have the respect being taught to them. I mean, this is the Lilithian mindset.
Well, of course. I mean, look at it this way. The only reason that this propaganda is being propelled onto, websites like Twitter and YouTube and whatever like that is because they are trying to foment a change into a Lilithian age. And it's so easy. Oh,
it is. People.
Yeah, exactly.
We see this a lot. I mean, we see this all over the place with games. We see women, what they have done as part of this, ushering in this agenda, is to usurp and emasculate men and put women in the position of the man. So the gender roles have become inverted. And when you do that, of course, you destroy the family, which Lilith hated humanity. The family of humanity, the children, that's where you get abortion. Abortion is a Lilithian agenda, because Lilith hated humanity and she wanted to see humanity destroyed. So you think of it this way, wherever this demon Lilith is, we have to understand that this takes place at a higher level. So whatever that thing is, if it is a thing, or however that's taking place, that thing is giving orders to the oligarchs to push the propaganda that we see today, to make sure that Lilith gets her agenda pushed through. So that's where we see manifestations of, movies like Star Wars, the recent one that came out, which I heard is a complete disaster. It's all Lilithian, Jezebel, demonic crap. Putting usurping and emasculating the man and putting the woman above it all. And what Johnny said, this is the ushering in and the, I guess you can call it, predictive programming to get people in the mindset to worship women. And going back to that article that I was mentioning about Texas, when those well, I call them witches because that's what they are.
They are.
When those witches said that about, you know, how, you know, what did you say? There's some woman that said women need to be treated with respect or whatever. This is not some kind of ploy as feeling that they don't have respect. This is them wanting to be fucking worshipped, and they want men to submit.
Okay, okay, Element, I'm going to match you on that. We have Francesca Minerva, Dr. Francesca Minerva, out of Italy. She wants to have post-birth abortion. You know, your kid is convenient? Yeah, kill him. Especially him or her, but especially him. Up to the age of 3. Why? Because, you know, at the age of 3, a child is not cognizant. The child is not able to make any kind of like, you know, abstract connections with reality. But why stop there? Why not kill the child up to, you know, age 12, 13, or 14, when the child is not able to produce another human, you know, is not sexually viable. And it's going to come to that point. Got to think about this. Francesca Minerva, you know,
well, I think you hit it.
Google it.
I think you hit the point right there on the head. It's to prevent reproduction. And how do you know, I've mentioned this before on my private channel, but I said, you know, the way that they're going about doing this is very similar to how you exterminate a pest problem. Well, what do you do to get rid of the pest, like an ant colony? Well, you kill the colony with poison. You know, you can't kill off the whole entire ant colony by killing each and every single individual ant. That would take you forever, and they would keep multiplying. And at the rate they multiply, you know, you're never going to get the job done.
You have to burn the candle at both ends. Exactly.
Yeah, you have to start with where do the ants come from? They come from the nest. And what is the nest? It's the home. It's the family unit. So to exterminate the human population, you target the family unit or the home, which is the nest. You know, if you kill a wasp, you don't kill one wasp, you go target the nest. That is ultimately why what you said, Johnny, they want to prevent this. They want to kill off the ability to have humanity, or the human family is the main aspect, because this is tying into Lilith. She wants to see humanity destroyed. So she's targeting the home, preventing people from reproducing, creating an influx of false sexual assault claims, nonsensical brainwashing and propaganda that we see in our movies, our games, our television, every day, 24/7, and every single day, it's about sexual assault. It's all about creating this allure to destroy man and emasculate him. If you look at, I mean, I was just, you know, playing a game, and there was an advertisement for a game on the main homepage where when you looked at, and it was classic propaganda, the way that they had strategically placed this image. They had a picture of a girl, and she was holding the hand of a young boy. Now, to somebody that might be innocent, but not to how they're doing it. It doesn't work that way. That is a subconscious and subliminal message to say man needs to have his hand held because he is emasculated. That is really part of that underlying subliminal message that I had caught in that particular advert. And we see this being subliminally interjected in movies and all over the place with news and what's and such, you know, every bit of it. This is to target the family, and they have destroyed the family. Families still do exist, but they're on the rocks right now. You don't hear about very many. I mean, divorce is off the chain in this country. Nobody's getting married. Japan right now has an epidemic of people not having kids or even being sexually attracted to one another.
I feel the same way. I don't want to get married. I don't want to have a kid. I don't want to, you know, procreate, because I realize that the risk is too great for me, and I have to preserve the nest egg that I do have, and it's not being selfish. It's being smart.
Well, I think, you know, people would ask us, well, you say the agenda is to destroy the family. Why would you not want to have a family? I'm sure people are going to ask that, and I'm going to tell you why. It's a catch-22. Part of it is that we have been pushed into a corner, and we have no options. We are at a position where it's either, okay, you have kids, and they're going to poison them, they're going to brainwash them, and they're going to indoctrinate them. On the other side of that, it's, why would I want to put a kid through that? And as Johnny said, why would I want to lose my hard work and investment, all to have, you know, a child be destroyed by the world? Why would I want to do that?
Because I'm a good guy. I don't want to bring another soul into the black iron cage from a Gnostic perspective. I don't want to chain a kid into the same cycle of wash, rinse, and repeat, and Smith and respawn that I don't agree with.
Yeah, and so that's why we take that stance. It's a preservation, and we know the agenda. And Lilith wants to have all the kids. She wants to destroy them and corrupt them, and we're not going to allow that to happen, so we're not going to have kids. And we don't want them because we enjoy our independence. You know, that is the main reason why. So, you know, it is a battle for it's a battle for souls, and Lilith wants to destroy and corrupt them all. And so when we look at society now, I'll get into, you know, the main root of this, which is that, and Johnny, I would like your input on this as well, to, you know, what you think about this. You know, I have a firm belief that the women in our society, especially in America, are so corrupt. I was telling Johnny this off air. I said, you cannot have the passion for evil and wickedness of what we call the Jezebel spirit unless you're possessed with it, which is what it is. It's demonic possession. And Johnny, you were telling me about somebody that you know that was going through this.
Yeah, my coworker,
friend Mel. Yeah,
Mel was he's, you know, pushing 60. He's about to retire, and this 30-something-year-old woman that is a coworker of ours would text him and try to you know, get him to have sex with her, bottom line. And he's married. He's like, I've been married for 38 years. You can't put this on my phone. And you know, she did not care. And once she was scorned with that put down, she went ape shit. Pardon my language, but that's exactly what happened. And if he does have any problem at work with her, I am definitely going to stand up for him. He's in my pod. You know, I'm his boss, and I'm definitely going to, you know, stand behind him.
I was telling Johnny, as when he was telling me this story, I said, you know, you cannot be, you know, I guess you can make the case to say that humans are corrupted at a certain point in the beginning. Maybe not when they're born, when they're babies. That's a different case. But when you start getting into your late puberty and teenage years, that's, I think, where the main corruption begins to manifest itself, if you want to argue that point, just to give both sides an equal share here. But at some point, as Johnny was saying about this person, you cannot be taught the level of evil of something so vindictive as to do what happened to Johnny's coworker, unless, this is not something that you can be taught to learn how to be. The thing about it is that it's the passion to want to see somebody destroyed.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is what her plan is for this man. Because what's going to happen is, if he gave into that, he would lose his family, he'd lose his wife, he'd lose his job, and then once the money was no longer there, she would leave him, and she'd happily do it.
What I seem to believe is that, and it's not seeming to believe, I have a firm belief that this is the case. This is demonic possession. It's the Jezebel spirit. It is these people, these women are possessed. They are. You think of possession as being like off of The Exorcist. No. This is like something else. You have that. There's different levels of possession. I don't know, Johnny, what the Gnostics say about possession, but this is like a parasitical possession. This is like a consciousness possession. It is a spirit. It is a mindset. The mindset is the possession. Mindsets are like an ideology.
It's called borderline personality disorder. And this woman typifies it like you wouldn't believe. Come on. She does not care what is going to happen to this man due to her machinations. She does not care about anything but the here and the now. That's all she cares about. She worries about next Friday, not next year or 10 years from now. She does not care about this.
Well, this goes back to my point about
no ability to plan. None.
Yeah, this goes back to what I was mentioning earlier about the Isis and Osiris situation. She wants power. And so this Jezebel possessed woman and the women that are in the United States have there is an epidemic of Jezebel, Lilithian demonic possession on levels you can't even comprehend right now. I'm sure all of the men that understand the sexual dynamics and the sexual politics of the gender war that has been going on understand this. They understand this very well. This is...
Mel is old enough. He served in the U.S. Air Force. He, was almost going to fight in Iran. He worked on the frickin' space shuttle. He is wise enough and old enough and smart enough to understand what is happening here, and he's not going to allow that to take form into his family, and not just for his children, but for his wife. He understands that. But this woman is just so inexperienced.
Well, I think that's because, the thing that's inside her mind isn't what's driving her around. It's a demonic possession, and it causes people to do things that they wouldn't normally do because something else has taken hold. And the longer you allow that to fester, the more ingrained it becomes. So that's why you have these women that are in their 50s that we make, we say, it's the crazy cat woman, because she had allowed this thing for so long to ingrain itself into her mindset, this possession, that by the time she was in her mid to late 60s, she's on her own. And that's the price that they pay. This is the consequences of this kind of mindset, this Jezebel spirit mindset, this Lilithian mindset. And it's taken over our society. And as I've said before, and as Johnny and I have said on previous Hangouts, this is for the collapse of a civilization when you allow this to happen. Now what do we have? An epidemic of, now they're pushing pedophilia. Again, it's Lilith hating humanity and wanting to corrupt it, to cut off the supply of order. And family units and all of that stuff provide order. Not anymore, but that was at least partly the intention. And so now here, look at it now. Look at what we have now. So to surmise that, we have to understand that we have to look into the past and realize what has happened before us to understand what's going on now. Because this has happened before, and it will happen again, and America is not exempt from it. The world, not just America, but the world is not exempt from this. And it's being pushed. And every single day it gets a little worse. And so people like Johnny and myself and others that are aware of the situation, we live a life that we have taken of celibacy, to abstain from sex, because it's all about power. And we will not allow or participate in this dilemma, especially at this point in time. And if things weren't like this, then we probably wouldn't be in this position. We wouldn't adopt this mindset. But the thing about it is, here we are in this position.
You know, you women, you like 2 or 3 women who are listening to this show, go ahead and have sex with 14-year-old boys and dogs and horses and pigs. Go ahead. I don't care. Fuck you. I'm serious. You know, you're going to reap the consequences of that great reward. So go ahead and do it. I'm not going to foster it, and I'm not going to promote it. It's the way I see it.
No, because it's out of control and it's corrupting the children, and that's where you draw the line. When you start corrupting kids, you know, you keep that shit in your little fetishes and your weird perversions to yourself. But when you start spreading that shit out into the world and you start trying to push that on people, that's where you draw the line, and that's where enough's enough. It's what they call a retrobate mind. When you know, I mean, Johnny and I were talking. I think Johnny, you brought this up about how the sex industry is like making dildos in the shape of animal genitalia now.
They are.
That is retrobate mind. That's a retrobate mind. That's bestiality. And a retrobate mind is basically a conscience that has been seared and cut off. And when that happens, you're done. So just be aware of what you're getting yourself into. It's not all fun and games here. But people don't listen to us, do they, Johnny?
No, they don't. But whatever.
Whatever.
We have some.
At least if we stand trial, you know.
We have some stalwart
we'll be here to
listeners.
tell them.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to, you know, go for that kind of sexual proclivity, you know, that's up to you. I'm not going to stop you. I can't stop the companies that make those toys that you want, and you're just going to have to face the consequences eventually of it. Maybe you won't face any consequences. Maybe you'll be rewarded for it. I don't know. You know, go ahead, check it out.
Yeah. Well, I think they create an artificial sense of reward. Otherwise, people wouldn't do the perversion, and they would not want to destroy humanity unless it was promoted in our society, like these articles and like the movies and like the feminism and like the abortion and the politicians that promote it all. You know, that the reward is that they get the gratification and the vanity and the affirmation of being able to do these things. And so they do them, and they continue to do them because they get rewarded for it. But there's always a cause and effect to everything. So they'll be rewarded, but they're going to pay the price for it, either spiritually or later on down their life. Because I tell you, Lilith doesn't like you. If you think Lilith has this thing for women and you know, there you get some kind of precedent just because of that fact. You're an idiot. She hates everybody, and she's just using you idiots because you're too stupid to figure it out.
Exactly.
So
Lilith
just keep
hates
that in
all
mind.
humanity. All humanity. She, you know, we are the byproduct of failure of her plan, and you got to deal with it.
So to sum that up, you know, this is demonic. It's demonic. It's evil. It's corrupt. It's reprobate. It's pure evil. It's vile and it's disgusting, and it needs to be stomped out of existence. But we can only talk here on our little channel and say our piece about it. You know, as I was saying, maybe we'll stand trial one day in front of these fucking things and say, well, what did you did you speak out against it? And we can say, yep, we have like 58 videos about it. So here you go. Here's our evidence. Here's what we think about it.
Right.
We're the jury, and here's what we think about it. So, you know, we're going to go ahead and start way before on this in case something like that does happen. You know, just playing a little 4D chess on this event. And yeah, we're not going to stand for it. So it's demonic, and it's demonic possession. It's this Jezebel spirit, and advice. And I guess we'll sum up this 30-minute segment here with advice for young men out there, Johnny. I think that would be good. And then we'll move to Alex Jones. So Johnny, I mean, what do you think? What kind of advice do you think we should tell the young guys out there that might be listening about
young
this kind of
men
event?
listening right here. Okay, young men listening here should be able to be conscious and aware of not only their 5 senses, but their 6 senses. You have to be attuned to what a woman is trying to communicate with you. What she says is not what she does, and what she does could be very harmful for you. Be very careful of that because you might have to pay for that. And the law of the land in many Western countries are going to foster her ideologies. Anyway, speaking of big pieces
Absolutely.
of shit, yeah. Speaking of big pieces of shit, what about Alex Jones?
Yeah, Alex Jones. Well, I think, and I'd like to add on what you said there, Johnny, before we move forward. I think that's a good piece of advice. And to young guys, you know, we all understand the sexual urges. We all understand that. But you have got to learn self-discipline. If you do not, you will pay for it in this time and age. You will. This is not a time, you know, there's a time for peace and there's a time for love. Now, and there's a time for war and hate. We're in the time of war and hate. And in the time of war and hate, you don't plant, you know, watermelons in the middle of the battlefield. Okay? So if you don't have that self-discipline,
you plant landmines.
yeah, you do. You plant landmines, you put up barricades, and you protect yourself, and that's what you should be doing now. And if you do not have that discipline, then you're going to pay for it. There's no sympathy to be had here. It is what it is. This is a war. This is a war for souls. This is a war against man, and especially now, definitely big time. Just go look at all the TV shows and crap. It's a war against man. Do you want to be a eunuch? Do you want to be either psychologically or physically castrated for the sake of a demonic demigod called Lilith? Keep that in mind. Do not participate in this. You must realize what you're dealing with here, and you got to cut them off. We've you know, no more games here. We cut off the whole supply. You know, no more nonsense. There's no time for it. We know what's on the line, so just keep that in mind. So yeah, pieces of shit, Alex Jones. What about?
Well,
Yeah,
I think that this whole depersonalization, unpersoning, whatever you want to call it, is a charade. I really do. I think that this is something that he's being paid for.
Yeah, and people, of course,
he's going to get a golden parachute, basically.
Yeah. People, of course, will disagree with us, and that's fine. I don't really care what you think about that. You have the title to your own opinion. We're just giving you our side of the argument here. And, you know, I always found it funny, too, that people would get really upset to defend something, but they don't realize that they don't know the whole story, and they think they do. You know, this is why we give one side, and we'll have, you know, another person has an opinion about it. You know, but aside from that, I think Johnny is correct. I think Jones is controlled opposition, and I think that this was all set up. These people don't just do this for no reason. Everything, especially when you have the money backing and as well as the financial incentive to, have that guy have as much influence as he does with all those backers and people behind him. They're not just going to pull a fast one on somebody with that kind of money. There's a lot of money that a lot of people have put into something. All the investors and all, wherever the money's coming from, they're not just going to pull that out like it's nothing. That's too much. That's too serious of not just the money, but the propaganda and influence behind that, to simply just say, okay, some random person shut it off unless it was not planned. Everything that the propaganda machine, that the mainstream media and the alt-right media go hand in hand. They're going to plan this out to make sure that things go according to plan.
Well, you hit the nail on the head too. I mean, the alt-right media like Gab and BitChute and Steemit and Minds.com, they're nothing but nets for people who are trying to speak their mind, and they're going to capture them in small little tidbits. They understand that. And I think that they have been engineered to become that last net of capture for people who are trying to do that. I mean, we're on BitChute, right? And Minds.
No, we're not on Minds, but I did set up a BitChute account as a backup. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, the thing is that we're going to be isolated by fewer numbers. Okay, if you take a look at the demographics of people that are migrating to these alt tech sites, you're going to be in a very small minority that is easily discovered, and that's bad. That's not going gray. That is not what we need to do.
The thing that, and this has come out in the news, all of these sites gather your data for many reasons. One of them is to figure out how well the propaganda is working on the public. And so they have set up these sites, in my opinion, to gather data on the public's consensus and what they're going to speak out against and what their mindset is at the time, to feed that data into, whether it's some kind of crazy quantum computer or however they get the data, to figure out how to adjust the propaganda for the next step. They push that and gather that data to figure out the mindset of people so that they can figure out how well the propaganda is working. That's why you have think tanks. And that's why, I saw a video of some kind of group of people that were voters, and it was about the political debate going on right now. And they had a room of about 5 or 10 people, and they asked them a series of questions about, the president, and they asked him about his policy, not about the president wasn't in the room, but it was the people that voted. And they asked the people that voted about the president, about, the political situation and all that. And it was so crazy. They had people that would disagree and agree on one thing. So they would say something, and then you would have people in the room of these 10 people yelling at each other based upon something that either somebody agreed with or disagreed with. And it was so, and what was happening there is that they were trying to figure out, is the division of what this is happening working according to plan? Are people divided? And sure enough, they were, because immediately the very first question or the very first minute that somebody had brought up a statement about policy or whatever, and somebody didn't like it, then they'd start yelling and fighting each other. And that's exactly what they want. It's divide and conquer. It's propaganda, and it's working well. And that's how they gauge that. And they wanted to figure out what happens when we ask a series of touchy questions. And if we put out the right questions and people start arguing with each other, then we know to put those questions in the mainstream news or in articles so that people start fighting each other.
Well, you migrate from YouTube to BitChute or Minds or Gab, whatever have you. You are isolating yourself, and you are making yourself so explicitly known in an explicit way that you're so easily identified and easily located. And that's one thing that you don't want to do as a gray man. You don't want to be found.
That's a great point, Johnny. Keep talking just 1 minute. I'm going to go run to the kitchen, grab water, and be back in 1 second. That's great.
Yeah, okay, great. The thing about being found is a detriment to your message and a detriment to what you want to express yourself in any sort of way. It doesn't matter if you're off to the right or the left. If you are against the powers that be, against the grain, you're going to be identified and spotted in such a small pool of people that are doing the same thing like you, and you are going to be easily located. You don't want to be located. You don't want to be found. Back when YouTube was monetized before Adpocalypse, people loved being found. But in today's political climate, and this has nothing to do with Trump, you want to be hidden from the corporate oligarchy, the kleptocracy, the plutocracy. You want to be hidden from that. If you have to do something extremely alternative, like broadcast on shortwave radio where only 5 people listen to you, great, do it. Do it. Element and I might have to do that. We might actually have to have ham radio to broadcast esoteric lectures in the next 5 years or sooner.
Well, if you could
think
remember
about that.
If you could, I don't remember where I heard this from. I think it was off of an Alan Moore documentary. If you remember that, did you ever watch that documentary that he did by Alan Moore?
Yeah, I've watched many of his works.
Well, if you can recall, there was a scene where I think it was talking about Rorschach's journal, and there was that radio in the background that was saying, "This is the voice of fate." Anybody that's listening to this, if you can hear me, or whatever it was. It might have been from Orwell, the movie. I can't remember. But he was doing it. That was on shortwave radio. And he was broadcasting that message saying, if there's anybody out there that still can hear me and still has a consciousness, here I am.
We may have to do that. I bought a frequency box by a German company called Coma Electronic. And they have shortwave band, and I can actually plug a microphone into it and put some noodles into my amplifier and eventually send out my voice and my message to people via the shortwave. And nobody can find that because it's not on the internet. It's actually on shortwave radio. So I might get to speak to somebody from Minnesota or Iowa or Michigan. And
another alternative, not even with shortwave radio, but also ham radio.
Ham is great.
Yeah, you have to have a license to actually speak with it, but you don't have to have one to listen to it.
Yeah, with ham you do have to get a license.
Yeah, with shortwave everybody can. Yeah. So I mean, ham radio is another. I'm going to look into ham radio just for my own hobby.
Well,
think about get a license in that.
I think that'd be great, but the thing is, once you're licensed, you're identified again. It's the same as joining up to YouTube.
Yeah, good point.
But with shortwave, it's wild, wild west. You can say, anything you want.
Johnny and I even went to the extent of saying, if we get cut off like completely and it gets really bad, like complete to tyranny, we'll just mail each other letters.
Yeah, we will.
You know, we'll just mail each other like coded messages in the freaking mail. You
That's
know, if it gets that bad, then we'll figure out a way. There's always a way for people to communicate. It might not be, you know, it might not be favorable, but there's always a way for people to communicate. It's just finding the loophole to do it. People give away too much information.
But I also like receiving information and giving it as best as I've found. And, you know, I give it to you first. Every time, Element. Every time.
Yeah, same with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, but people give away, and I think, Johnny, you were hitting on a good point there about Gray Man, and we might have to bring that back up again at some point. You know, people give away too much information in this day and age. They're just, part of it is that you really don't have a choice. Sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to click the agreed terms and conditions. You have to, you know, but of course nobody reads that, but we know in there they're gathering data. They can shut you down. And that's the thing that people don't remember, is that when you conditions, you agreed to have it said that they reserve the right to terminate and change the terms at any discretion that they feel necessary. That means that they have the right to say, well, one day we feel like we'll allow you guys to speak on something. The next day, I don't think we want that anymore. So you agreed to that in a legal contract. That's the thing people forgot to remember. And yes, it's unfair, but you agreed to it. So what can I say?
Probably did not read those terms because it's just
nobody does.
A long list of boilerplate language. But Element, what do you think about Alex Jones and you know, your take on this alt-right, alt-tech revolution that's being spawned by it?
Well, I'm gonna lay out a series of possibilities. One possibility is that they pulled the plug on him to see what people's reactions were, to gather data to figure out where people were at. For whatever reason that is, it could be for propaganda, it could be to get people all in a frenzy, which is the second possibility is that they knew if he kept talking about controversial topics, it would then give the powers that be an excuse.
And what was that one killer topic he touched on that just destroyed him? Transgender. He started
is that what pulled him off?
Yep, he started talking about little boys being turned into John Benet Ramsey. And he had videos of it and everything. And after that, they gang banged him like Pornhub. I mean, for lack of a better phrase.
So I think a second possibility is that, like you said, Johnny, if he kept mentioning these topics, and that could have given the powers that be in the internet tech giants, the internet platform CEOs, whoever runs it, the excuse to change the terms and conditions. And as we saw, they painted him in a very bad light all over the news. And they said, well, you look here, you see, it's people like this, people like conspiracy theorists that talk that need to be shut down because look at what it did. And that would give them the excuse to put the kibosh down on the internet platforms and censor people, which was the agenda all along, but they needed a catalyst to get that done. They needed an excuse. We call this false flag. It was a false flag. It's order out of chaos. They created an event that was orchestrated that Jones was probably, you know, he knew about. He was all in on it, in this possibility. And they used that to push that agenda through because he was the guy that instigated that to make that adjustment happen. That's a second possibility, I believe. I think those are the two big ones.
Well,
I think
all of a sudden, the U.S. government, the FCC, investigates his broadcasting transmitter They find out that it's a coming from a laundry room in an apartment complex in Austin. He had not paid FCC license dues for 3 years, making him a pirate radio, and they cut him off.
It's interesting. I mean, all I have to say, I think the thing about Jones is, my take on it is that he's controlled opposition. He's in the know about all this stuff. Part of it is that they're gathering, all those people that would call into Jones's show. They're gathering data on those people to figure out who's going to be a problem and how are we going to deal with them. Who are they? Where they live?
That's why I never, ever subscribe to him. Never.
Well, don't subscribe to like we were talking about Gray Man. Be very aware of where you give your data out. What I would suggest people do is get a piece of paper and write down every piece of technology you have in your house, every bit of it. All of that you wrote down, it's all compromised, every bit of it. And each of those pieces of technology, your cell phone, if you got a gaming console, your Comcast, if you have Comcast, the internet provider, your internet service provider, anything that you're subscribed to, all the mail that you get, write down all of that stuff. Write down everything that you have that has your personal information in it, and then try to get rid of it. See how it now, but keep a list of every piece of technology, because every piece of technology has your personal information in it, and you need to be aware so that every time that you look at that piece of paper, if you even do look at it, if you're actually going to do it, remember about all that technology is not only interlinked with each other, but it all has your data. So be careful what you do on those, because they're gathering. They're basically, that's like, what do you think they called the personal computer for, the PC? It was a big giant data mining machine.
Right, exactly.
That's what it was designed for. That's why they call it a personal computer, because it's computing your data.
A guy that I know named Scott tried to download the Underwriter, Tor. Yeah, and that's your gateway to the deep web, the dark web. And our only ISP said to him, "You get rid of that now, or you are losing your rights for online access." They were going to cut him off. And he said, okay, all right. But because we are in such an isolated community here, they found him easily. And they can do the same thing with me. You got to think about that shit.
The technology gray man might be another. Well, man, I mean, I really, it probably wouldn't be enough. It's a simple principle. I'll just mention it now. Anything that you do on the internet is compromised. It's all being tracked. It's all being recorded. Period. All of it. Doesn't matter what you do. Like you were saying, Johnny, the Tor router, you don't think the feds have probes all up into that? You think they haven't compromised that? Of course they have.
It was made by the Navy. The Navy made Tor.
The internet was developed by the Defense Department, wasn't it?
Right. By the naval.
Was it by DARPA or something like that?
No, the Navy made Tor back in 1995.
I think the development of the internet was in the military.
DARPA made the internet back in '69.
So there you have it, folks. It was made by the very people that you think you're trying to control against, but people don't understand that. So be careful what you put out there. Be careful what you search. Be careful what you say. I'm sorry, but, people will argue with us and say, well, if you do that, then they win because you're not speaking out. Well, we are speaking out, but we're doing it in a very specific way. They will shut you down now on YouTube. YouTube is not what it used to be, 10 years ago. Now, if you say the wrong thing, you will be shut down. You will. Johnny, do you remember a guy by the name of Jay Dyer?
No.
Okay, well, he does this thing called Jay's Analysis. He talks about the occult and MK Ultra and Hollywood and all this stuff. he got shut down off of his blog posts. They went after his WordPress. So they're not just going after people's YouTube, they're going after their WordPress now. So all of your, and it's because your account are interlinked with other platforms. So if your account, like Google, is interlinked to any of the other platforms, there is also terms and conditions in terms of service that allow them to go in there and shut that down too when you sign up for that, because that's why they try to get everybody's account interlinked with everything else, which is what I hated. I never did that because I knew all it is just allowing them to link everything together for control. And so now when you have your app, when you have your WordPress with the Gmail account, Google's, you know, bought that out or whatever, now they have the right to go in there and take that off too. So you have to be careful what you say if you want to keep saying what you want to say. And unfortunately, that's where we're at. You know, you can deny that all you want, but it's the damn truth. You either live in reality and realize what's going on, or you can avoid it and pretend it doesn't exist.
Bottom line, everybody, freedom of speech is all but dead. But we're going to keep speaking, and we're going to keep doing what we do until they take us away. Yeah, until our daddy takes our T-Bird away. We are going to still keep promoting and transmitting what we know to be the truth. And then, you know, if we find something different, we'll amend that happily. That's fine. But at the same time,
yeah, we are not controlled opposition here.
Yeah, we're not. We're not monetized. We don't ask for PayPal tips. We don't ask for Patreons. We are just here doing this because it needs to be done. And I don't mean to sound like some paladin or some great warrior, and neither is Element, but, you know, we have a mission statement, and we're going to continue to broadcast that for you as long as we can.
I think, to sum up Jones, it was all, my opinion on it, my take on it, is that it was done deliberately to cause people to, mainly the people that control the internet, because right after that happened, of course, now everybody's getting censored even more. It was an excuse to have them push an agenda, because he was talking about topics that allowed them to push laws now and censorship, which is the juxtaposition that they needed to push that through. And Jones, who is Jones? He was the biggest guy talking about this kind of stuff on the whole internet. So what a better person to push the agenda through than a guy that was speaking out against the very things that he helped to get into place. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, it was all programmed from beginning to end. And now we're seeing the end. So hopefully all of you listeners are going to take up arms and start transmitting your own truth. And if you don't, well, fuck you. Have a good midnight.
Your freedom of speech, you know, is you know, if we're running out of time, so you need to, if you're going to speak up, you better do it now, because we don't know how much time we got left. So if you feel so inclined, then you better do it now, or you might not have the ability to, and you'll regret it, you know, because you might have not said something, you know, that you could have added to the discussion. So, you know, just keep that in mind. Johnny, is there anything else you want to bring up?
I think this is a great talk. I think it was a great lecture, and we touched along a lot of points, and I think we should wrap it up.
Yeah, well, thank you, everybody, for listening. And like I said, we were gone for a little bit, but we are back now. And thank you for everybody and the support, the subscribers, the comments, the likes. You know, appreciate it. I'm glad that, you know, you find us talking interesting. And we'll do the best we can to share the information to the best of our ability to do it right. And as Johnny said, if we do find something that is incorrect, we will adjudicate that, and we will bring up that in our future hangouts. So thank you for tuning in today. Appreciate it. And until the next time, have a good one.
Bye.